Hello and welcome. This is day 3 of the Sled Island Music Festival. My name is Jordan Stovra, and I am here with comedian Robby Hoffman. How are you doing, Robby?
I'm doing great. Thank you, now that we're inside.
Yeah, this is always a good part, and now I'm looking out in the rain, and I'm glad that we're inside because we were initially planning to have this interview outside, and then it started thunderstorming. And is this a fear of yours, is the thunder and the lightning?
What happened when the thunder happened? How far off my seat? And what was my squeal level compared to a small schoolgirl like?
It was incredibly similar. So let's talk about when did you start performing comedy? What was the come up for you when you started performing comedy? And where did you start performing comedy?
Well, I actually started performing in Montreal, where I spent most of my life. My mother is from Montreal, and I was originally born in New York, and then we moved up. My mother moved the family up there. And I don't know that I always dreamt of doing comedy or anything like that. When I started also falling in love with comedy. I started watching old comedy as I was starting, not knowing what an institution it really was. So I came up in Montreal, and I kind of grew up, my influences, if anything, were my own family. Not knowing, not being exposed to the television comedy or movies or things like that at a young age. Really, I came from such funny people, and my whole family was very funny. And I have 9 siblings, and we had a very interesting, upbringing, to say the least. So that was really the root of it. And then when I knew it was a real thing you could do, I thought, well, I've certainly got a story to tell if that's what you're looking for. And it kind of just started there.
And when you're watching like older comedy, who are kind of your influences? Who do you kind of look for that inspiration in your comedy?
Well, it's like I said, I didn't grow up idolizing comedians or knowing them. So when I started doing it, I really was just doing what was authentic to me. And then only as I started doing it was I watching things. I was going back and I watched Eddie Murphy. I'm like, this guy's amazing. Somebody should give him something, as if he wasn't already the biggest, I'm 25 years late to it.
Yeah.
But now looking back, as I started looking at these people, not necessarily a comedian, but I love the work ethic and the career of somebody like Joan Rivers. I look at Howard Stern. Even though he's not a stand-up, I liked his career and things like that. So it's hard to say influences, but those two, certainly their longevity in this has been inspiring to me.
And you deal with a lot of social topics. What do you, or a lot of what annoys you about today? Yeah. What do you think is the most annoying trend that you look around and deal with on a daily basis that just grinds your gears?
Well, it's like this whole thing that I'm talking about on stage now. I just started talking about, this pizza culture that we have amongst young grown-ups is, depressing to me that a 35-year-old man on Instagram is posting about pizza like it's the greatest thing. Pizza's the last resort, but now we have this comeuppance of pizza, this glorification of it like it's anything more than pizza. So that, that's something that bothers me amongst grown-ups. As I'm a grown-up myself, I find that my peers are not living up to it. And I think that, so that's a trend that I've been, it doesn't seem like a large thing to be upset about, but I think it permeates the general culture in a way that's dissatisfying, and I need to talk about it.
For sure. And you've written for a lot of TV shows. What do you think is the most, what's been your favorite writing room that you've wrote in?
It's tough. I feel like I've been really lucky. The rooms that I go from room to room. I think I've been really lucky that every room brings something different to the table. It's really tough to say. The past year I've been writing on the Gethard show, which is a show out of New York, and it's a live late night show, and it's a very DIY feel to it, and it's very different. Writing concepts for that show is very different than when I wrote on scripted half-hour Working Moms on CBC, which was an all-women's room, and it was stories. It was long-form stories, scripts. So they were both incredible experiences, but both vastly different from each other. So to compare them would be difficult.
For sure. And let's speak a little bit more on the Chris Gethard show. I have a fascination and overall enjoyment of professional wrestling, and I know that that's kind of sometimes leaks into the Chris Gethard show. Have you ever worked with any of them, writing sketch for any of the wrestlers? And
Yes, we had a wrestler the season before this past. We had these guys come in to kind of wrestle, and they were, I think, MMA type people, actually. And I don't know the difference. But Chris, in every writer's meeting, will veer back to wrestling as an idea. So it comes up, I would say, daily. And I think between the network and the writers, it's put on pause daily as well. But to his credit, he has gotten 2 very big wrestling-themed episodes on the air. And I think that's enough for any television show. But we had these MMA fighters come and kind of pin him down with different locks and holds. It's a very homosexual thing, and I think it helps some of the guys on the show deal with their homosexuality in a way that is safe. So I'm encouraging of it at the end of the day.
And what do you think is in the future for you? What do you maybe you have some plans lined up? You don't seem the type to have like a podcast.
I would do a podcast, but it seems like to me, like to sit down and do a podcast, I got to get the plugs. Like I would need you there to do, to help me like with the mics and the whole thing. Cause I'm happy to just get on and talk, but it's the other tech side of the podcast that doesn't interest me, but I never say never. What's next for me is, I'm doing a bunch of festivals this summer. I have kind of the summer off before we're figuring out some other stuff. I have some original scripted stuff that I'm going forward with. But I'm really going to get back into stand-up. Being holed away in the writer's room for so long, I don't do as much stand-up as I would necessarily love. But the summer's a great time to, I picked up this festival. I'm going to a festival in Portland. I'll be in Montreal. So I'll be doing a lot of stand-up and just these great festival spots. So I'm excited for that summer. And then later in the fall, we'll see what other shows I get up to.
And maybe lastly, we'll speak. The difference between being a writer and actual stand-up on the stage, do you feel like you have to like go do some drop-ins and get the rust off before you come to a festival like Sled Island, or do you feel like you can come here and you can kind of roll with the punches, kind of like with last night? It wasn't necessarily the most fullest crowd, but it was like something you can kind of roll with the punches with and see how the crowd reacts to you.
Yeah, the crowd yesterday was phenomenal. I was really happy with them. For me, I feel so natural on stage that for some people, they come to me and they say, well, stand-up's so difficult. And that's for them. But for me, as soon as I get on stage, that's where I am home. I'm most awkward in a social setting that is small talk or something like that. Versus stand-up is my home. I feel alive. I feel energetic. It's maybe to some people how they do drugs or something like that. For me, it really feeds me, and I feel so natural. So I don't necessarily at this point in my career have to, do those warm-up spots necessarily. Here I just showed up and I just had a great time, and I gave that crowd all of the energy that was probably in me from not doing shows for a couple days in a row, or a week. But yeah, the experience between writing in a room, I mean, I think people ask me what I like more or how do I do both. And for me, I don't have kids. I write in a room from 10 to 7. I go home for supper for 2 hours. Then I go to a stage by 9. I do a show. I'm in bed by 11:30. It's kind of actually a very regimented life that I have, but people can't see it, don't see it like that. And they both keep me fresh. Stand-up keeps me fresh in the room. I come 10 o'clock in the morning to the room. I'm reinvigorated with all kinds of ideas that I never had thought about just because I had been alive the night before. And it just gets the juices going. So they both help each other, and the writing helps me keep structure within my stand-up. So they're both really complementary of each other. So I can't imagine not doing either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to thank you for the interview today. I really appreciate it.
You.
And I want to shout out Paved Arts for helping provide the equipment used to shoot the show. We'll be doing interviews all week. This is day 3. It is currently raining, and I'm not excited to go outside.